Kids, you're dismissed. Ever been disappointed with God? Raise your hand if you've ever been disappointed with God. Yeah, some of you lie a lot on Sunday. I want you to know that. Yeah, he didn't answer your prayer. He didn't give you the job you wanted. He didn't heal the person you wanted healed. He didn't provide you what you needed at the right time. There's been moments in my life when I've been really disappointed with God. And boy, the biggest one was when I was 23 years old. I went to Anderson, Indiana, where they used to hold the annual convention, or camp meeting as it's sometimes called. When I came back from that event, my dad was dead. I remember going to the hospital and seeing my dad in his lifeless body, and for some reason they left me alone in there, which was really cool. And I remember I was in there for a couple of minutes, and I remember walking around his bed saying, God, if you are God, raise him from the dead. I prayed that for 2 minutes straight. God, if you are God, raise him from the dead. Bring him back to life. God didn't. I went home, being the good Christian kid I was. I threw my Bible up against the wall, and I was furious. Totally furious with God. And I remember saying, and I remember it just like yesterday, why on earth do I believe in you? You ever asked that question? For 9 years, I continue to ask that question. This long moment in my life forced me to ask some really hard questions about whether I was going to continue to follow God or not. I was frustrated with God, I was disappointed with God, and I didn't know if he was even worth believing in. Oh, you just can't do that. Sorry, I already did. And I think all of us, if we're honest, we've had moments in our life where we've been frustrated with God, we've been disappointed with God, and we may not have said the question out loud, but in our hearts we have asked the question, why on earth do I believe in you? All you do is disappoint me time and time and time again. You never do anything that I ask you. I pray and I pray, but nothing seems to happen. I pray for my kids. I pray for her, to come to know Christ, but yet, God, they don't seem to get it. And we get disappointed with God because God seems to be silent like he was, during that 400-year period between the Old and New Testament. He just appears to be silent. Where are you? Why on earth should I believe in you? And in those moments, boy, we're forced to ask that really hard question, aren't we? Why do I believe in you? I know that long moment forced me to ask questions. For 9 years, I asked that question. You see, that's what disappointment does. Like discouragement, it forces us to ask questions that need to be asked. Disappointments forces us to seek answers that only God can answer. And disappointment forces us to make a decision that will change our life. I believe disappointment forces us to get on our knees and ask God, why on earth do I believe in you? It really does. If you've ever experienced disappointment, especially disappointment with God, why on earth do I believe in? If you're not going to show up, if you're not going to show up when I need you to show up, if you're not going to bring my kids to Christ like you said you promised you would, or whoever it is, you're not going to heal them. Why on earth do I believe in you? Why? It just makes no sense to me, God. If you're not going to show up, what's the point of believing in you? And that creates a lot of disappointment. But disappointment does force us to get on our knees, doesn't it? And I think this is a question we all really need to ask, especially if you've walked through any tragedy, if you've been discouraged or disappointed in life. Every tragedy, every discouragement, and every disappointment is a moment in your life that shapes your future. Do you know that? Let me read that again. Every tragedy, every discouragement, and every disappointment is a moment in our life that shapes our future. That shapes what we believe and don't believe about God. It really does. Every moment that you walk through, this moment here will shape you this morning in your belief about God. If it doesn't, then boy, I'm not doing my job very well. Because in this moment, God is here. Jesus says, where there's 2 or 3 gathered in my name, what happens? He shows up. So Jesus is here. Now, whether you recognize him or not, it's a different story. But Jesus is here. He's in this moment with you right now. He's been with you in your moments of tragedy, in your disappointments, in your discouragement. He's been with you in those moments as well. But all these moments shape us and they mold us, and they shape our future. And, like discouragement, disappointment is part of the journey. Folks, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. This is one of why we're, not that we can't, it's going to happen. So that is why it's important that we prepare for those moments. How do you prepare for those moments? Well, this is one of them. Being here. Our faith journey, if you really look at it, is really a bunch of moments connected together by God. And God uses every moment, like I said, to shape us and to mold us and to prune us and, yes, even disappoint us. In fact, some of you who've been in the church for a while and sang some of the old hymns of the faith, you remember that song, Have Thine Own Way. Have Thine Own Way, Lord. Have Thine Own way. Thou art the potter, I am the what? Clay. I shape myself and I mold myself after my own will. Why I'm waiting on you to answer me still. Look it up. Is that the words? Jonathan knows they're not the words. Isn't that what we're really singing, though? Let's think about it now. No, it says, mold me and shape, make me after thy will. Why I am waiting, yielded and still. For years we've been singing this song. God, oh, shape me and mold me. But when he comes and he shapes us and molds us, what do? We don't want anything to do with him. Those moments of disappointment and discouragement, those things that we walk through are opportunities for God to shape you in his image, to mold you into the vessel he wants. Not what you think you need, but what he wants. And a lot of times we forget that. But Lord, have thine own way. Have thine own way as long as it's on my terms. Is that what we're in? Yeah. Because if we look at those words and we sing those words and if we're not willing to allow him to have his own way in our life, disappointment and discouragement are going to destroy you rather than build you up. One thing I hope you get this morning is that God never disappoints. Do you know that? He never disappoints. We're disappointed. God never disappoints. God's plans are always, we've gone through this verse. God's plans are always to give you a hope and a future. Disappointing you is never on God's agenda, but God uses our disappointment. So why do we get so disappointed with him? Well, I think in those difficult moments of our life, we expect God to treat us better, don't we? Don't we expect God to treat God? I'm going through this rough moment in my life, and we want him to treat us better. We think, when we go into prayer, which we should, we go into prayer thinking that God's going to make this all better. We want God, and we want him to make it all better. We think we deserve better from God than what we are actually receiving. We think we deserve more than what we're actually receiving. Folks, this is a sense of spiritual entitlement. Did you know that? We think we're entitled to a better life because we know God. At least most of the Christians I've met and talked to, and a lot of them, that we got this sense of spiritual entitlement. Entitlement sets up my human desire as a determiner of what is right and fair. The truth is we deserve nothing but alienation and punishment from God. We are an enemy of God because of sin, and we are not entitled to anything. Even when you give your life to Christ, you are not entitled to anything. But when you enter into that relationship with God, we are not do you know this? We are not entitled to forgiveness, mercy, and compassion. These things are given to you as a gift. We're not entitled to them. They're already given to you as a gift. Well, God's got to forgive me. Oh, no, he doesn't. He's got to show his mercy in my life. Oh, no, he doesn't. We think we're entitled to those things. Folks, we're not entitled to any of that. He gives it to you already as a gift when you enter into that relationship with him. Wow. But we live in that spirit of entitlement. And I think these things are demonstrated well in the story of the prodigal son. You know, when the younger brother comes back, what's the father do? When the other brother comes back, what's he do? What's he do? Throws a party. What? This dude went and had sex with prostitutes, spent all his money, got drunk. And what does God do for him? He comes back to him and God, no, that's not the way I would do it, would it? Was that the way you would do it? He deserves to be punished. Oh, he doesn't deserve that party. He doesn't deserve the ring on his finger in the sand. No, he doesn't get, no, he doesn't. In our mind, when we read the story, we're like, oh man, isn't that fantastic? That God would do that, don't we? Come on now, church. But inside we're like, ain't no way I'd give him a robe. Man, I would find the biggest switch and beat the tar out of him. You know? Wouldn't we, dads? Or the biggest paddle with holes in it. That's worse. But when the younger brother comes back, the father welcomes him and lavish and has a party for him. But what's the older brother's response? Look at what the older brother does here. He goes to his father and says, the older brother goes to his father and says, and the older brother was angry that he couldn't go in, and his father came out and begged him. But he replied, this is this older son talking, all these years I've slaved for you and never once refused to do a single thing you told me to do. And in all that time, you never gave me one young goat for a feast with my friends. Yet when this son of yours comes home, back squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fattened calf. How many Christians does that sound like? Oh, sorry, that was just a commentary. Do you hear the sense of entitlement? All these years, I've slaved for you. Never once refused to do a single thing that you told me to do. And in all this time, you never even gave me a young goat for a feast with my friends. Do you hear what he's saying? Dad, you owe me big time. I've done all of this right, and you didn't do a single thing for me. But this guy he wasn't even coming into the party, folks. This is his brother. He wouldn't come in. His dad pleaded with him to come in, but he wouldn't come in because he thought he had been mistreated. Don't we feel like we've been mistreated sometimes? And this older brother has this sense of entitlement. He's saying, Father, you owe me. And folks, grasp this, if anything, God owes us nothing. But he gave us everything through his one and only Son. And I'm convinced our sense of entitlement ruins a God moment in our life. Things we think we deserve, we don't treat them very well, do we? Well, we have an attitude about it. Don't we? But if we accept it as a gift, when someone gives you a gift, what do you do with it? Set it on the shelf and never open it again, right? What do you do with the gift? You open it. You know? But if we're entitled, if we get the gift thinking, man, we deserve this gift, shoot, I'm not giving you anything. Fooey on you. That's a good Christian attitude, isn't it? If you think you deserve it, I'm not going to give it to you. I'll wait a couple days. You know? And that's just my human spirit, my carnal spirit. God, forgive me. But that's just, but when I get it as a gift, when you give it as a gift and they receive it as a gift, do you hear the difference? Because when you receive it as a gift, it's a whole lot more meaningful, isn't it? And when you receive forgiveness as a gift, it's a whole lot more meaningful, isn't it? Rather than I'm entitled to it. Mercy, it's a whole lot more meaningful when I receive it as a gift. His compassion is a whole lot more meaningful when I receive it as a gift. I don't deserve it, but he gives it to me. God owes us nothing, but he gave us everything through his Son. And I think this is part of the reason we get so disappointed in him, because he is never enough and his timing is never right. Am I right? Isn't that why we get disappointed? Because he's never enough and his timing's never right. And so we, and every, we walk through life and we go through these moments in life and we think there's got to be more to this. Folks, the reason I believe we get disappointed in him is because he's never enough and his timing never right. And if all we want is the good stuff from God, I read this past week, wow. If all we want is the good stuff from God, folks, then we really don't want God. Do we? If all we want is the good stuff, if all we wanted him to answer our prayer, if all we want him is to give us our job, give us that money, give us that car, to heal that relationship, if that's all we want, and that's all good stuff, not belittling it in any way, but if that's all we want, then we've never really wanted God. And when God doesn't answer those prayers, we get disappointed. God didn't answer my prayer. He didn't bring my dad back to life. Guess who had to grow up? If all we want is perfect health, if all we want is a perfect spouse, if all we want is enough income, if all we want is perfect kids, if all we want is the perfect ending, you are always going to be disappointed, folks, because it just isn't going to happen. It doesn't. You're always going to be, there's no such thing as perfect health. There's no such thing as a perfect spouse. There's no such thing as perfect kids and grandkids. There's no such thing as a perfect ending. There's no such thing as a perfect timing. And there's no such thing as the right amount of income. And the more we realize this, the less disappointed we will be. In one moment, Joseph had the perfect life. Perfect life. He was one of the favorite ones. He got the really cool coat. His other brothers didn't. He was going to receive his father's inheritance, which is pretty amazing because he was the youngest and he was going to get the father's inheritance. Because that meant that he only recognized Joseph as his son. The others were just bonus babies that came before the real one, right? But in one moment, he had the perfect life. His father loved him more than all of them. And the next moment in his life, it was turned upside down. And for next 13 years, there was disappointment, disappointing moment after disappointing moment, and disappointment. We've read the story already. In those disappointing moments, it would have been easy just to take the way out and give up on everything. Joseph could have done that. But this is true. If your love is based on your circumstances that you're in, if your love for God is based on the circumstances that you're in, then your relationship with him will always be an up and down sort of thing. Don't you ever wonder why you have spiritual highs and spiritual lows? Ever ask yourself that question? Where there's moments where you just feel the presence of God. God just shows up. Well, folks, he's already here. He doesn't show up. In those moments, those spiritual low moments, those valleys we call them. Well, Scripture I read, he's with us in the valley too. But yet we allow those things to control our life. Well, we say, Lord, mold me and shape me, and we sing the words, but not really. Every moment we walk through in life. You guys have pictures at home, don't you? On vacation, and picture moments, of your kids or grandkids, or picture, a moment in time, a grade they were in. You just get on Facebook, all these moms post Facebook pictures of their kids, like, I don't care, They're cute, okay. That's just a guy thing, not a pastor thing. But, every one of those moments we walk through in life, is designed to mature us. And when you get to the point where God is enough, folks, when you get to the point in your life when God is enough, and that's why we go through these disappointing moments, these discouraging moments. That's why we go through tragedies. That's why we go through all these moments that we have in life, moments that we regret, moments that we wish would have never happened, moments that we wish we could take back. All of those moments are there to shape us and to form us and to mature us. And when you get to that point where God is enough, you have grown up. You've gone from pull-ups to wearing real underwear. Remember that? Moms, when you got your kids they finally wore that? Wasn't that a day of celebration? Woo-hoo! My boy, my girl's growing up. Wow! And there's a bit of sad and tears for that first haircut. Oh, my. I even cried when they cut Jordan's hair, But all of those moments are meaningful, and they mature us, and they cause us to grow up. And when you get to that point in your life, God is enough. You've grown up spiritually. And we lose a boyfriend or a girlfriend. That hurts. That's happened to me. That's painful to walk through. And those moments when, especially you parents, when your kids get hurt, you hurt with them, and that's painful. We're asking God, why did you allow that to happen? All those moments are there to grow us up and to get us into the big boy underwear, big girl panties, spiritually speaking. And that moment, you ever tasted baby food? It is nasty. And we make our kids eat it. At least we did. But when they got to eating real food, we know they'd grown up. Folks, God is enough, and only God is enough. Nothing other than God will ever be enough. If we pay attention to them, in those moments in life where we feel disappointed in God, these moments, we learn that God is enough. Don't we? And He's our divine enough. That's what He is. He's our divine enough. He meets your every need. And there's a freedom in knowing. There's a freedom in letting go. Man, that sounds like a song. Letting go, let it go. Yeah. Maybe somebody will write it someday. Boy, that moment when you're letting go of what I think I deserve and holding on to the only one who matters. Those are the things we hold on to, the things we think we deserve. But that's not what matters. The only thing that matters is God enough. Have you ever asked that question? Is God enough in my life? I've been through disappointment, discouragement. Those of you who've been through a lot of it, if you stayed with God and you've been obedient, and stayed with God and stayed in that relationship, you know what happens. You begin to learn that God is enough and that you can't control what's going on around you. And you can't control people who hurt you. You can't control people who disappoint you. You can't control any of that. And you say, well, God, you've got to be enough. You're all I have. But there's a freedom in letting go of what I think I deserve. And folks, I really think that hinders our walk with God. There is no doubt in my mind. We're like the older brother, aren't we a lot? Thinking we deserve this. Thinking we deserve all of this. And we know we don't. He's our divine enough. And you know, a lot of you know this verse. A lot of times we'll read Romans 8:28, but do you ever read the verse before that, 27? And the Father who knows all hearts knows what the Spirit is saying. For the Spirit pleads for us believers in harmony with God's own will. And then we know this part, and we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his perfect. The Spirit is pleading on our behalf. I mean, look at Joseph. Look at Joseph's story. You never read about him being disappointed with God. There was a moment he probably was disappointed in the cupbearer who forgot he was in prison after he helped him get out of prison by interpreting his dream. There's a moment there's a moment when the cupbearer did finally remember Joseph and his ability to interpret dreams. Okay, God allowed Joseph to languish in prison for more than 2 years. In that moment, Joseph must have wondered where God was, why nothing good was happening, but God was with Joseph even though it didn't feel like it. And look at what happened to Joseph. You know what happened to him, right? He became second in power to the most powerful nation in the world at the time. In that moment when Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dreams and gave him the plan to survive the next 7 years, his life was turned upside down once again. What was meant for evil to destroy Joseph, God used to save a nation. And like Joseph, when God is enough, get this. When God is enough, God causes all things to work together for your good. Good, bad, or evil. If God is enough, God causes all things to work together for your good. Not because you deserve it, but because he's trying to grow us up and mature us. Joseph wouldn't have really been a good second-in-command leader when he first arrived, would he have been? That would have been terrible. But walking through all of those moments in life, walking through all of those things in life, disappointment after disappointment, discouragement after discouragement, I honestly believe, and I believe it in faith, that in Joseph's mind, God was enough. That is the only way I could figure out how he could endure all that stuff he walked through. What was meant for evil, God used to save a nation. And then Joseph understood. He understood that God was with him in those good moments when things were going right. Joseph understood the disappointing moments when he was thrown into a cistern. Joseph understood God was with him in the bad moments when he was framed for rape. Joseph understood that God was with him in the insignificant moments when he's left in prison for 2 years. In each of those moments, God was enough. On Friday, I got to share with the kids at Lakeview. Just a blast. Sharing with kids is so much fun, And, I had pictures of me as a kid. You remember, when I was a kid, I had really thick glasses. I wish I should have put a picture up there. Really thick glasses. I loved to wear turtlenecks. I wore high-water pants. Didn't think there was anything wrong with that, Now I wear pants. I can't find pants that can go up high enough. Now they cover up the ground. But I got to share with the kids, what it was like with my kid, what it was like for me, and some moments as a kid in my life that I remember, to this very day, some 50 years later, 40, 50 years later. I shared with them that in grade school and middle school, I was made fun of because of my high-water pants and turtleneck shirts and my big white belt. Some of you would have laughed at me. I was made fun of because I was a smart kid that didn't let kids cheat off me. I was made fun of because of my height. You think I was short now? You should have seen me then. I didn't get to 5 foot tall till my sophomore year in college, or high school, not college. Then I grew to this wonderful height I am today. But during those times, they made fun of me. They made fun of the way I dressed. And in middle school, I was bullied. Fortunately, I was smart enough to talk them out of physically beating me up. I did every time they tried to beat me up. I talked the kid out of it. I have no idea how I did it, other than being a God moment. In middle school, I'll never forget this. In middle school, I was knocked down on some stairs and literally walked on. They walked on me after the books were knocked out of my hand, papers flying everywhere. I bent down to pick them up, and they walked on me. No one stopped to help me. And I'm sure there were some Christian kids in that. None of them. I never told my mom and dad any of those things. In fact, I think you're the ones I've only ever told. But in those moments, how do you think I felt? Yeah, you got the right picture. And those are moments in my life that could have destroyed me, they could have discouraged me, and they could have defeated me easily. Here's my take on it. It's my story. I believe God used those moments that were meant for evil towards me to give hope to those kids at Lakeview Christian School. That's happening. Some of the stuff is happening to them. One little girl came up to me and she said, "Did your teacher pick on you too?" No. Although I did have one teacher in high school that did. God used those moments that were meant evil towards me to give hope to those who are feeling knocked down, who feel discouraged, who feel disappointed, who had the crappy childhood or crappy parents, or you had things in life that you wish you would have never experienced as a kid. God's going to use those moments if you stay with him. You might not get to speak to elementary students, but I'm sure there's someone who's walked through something similar you've walked through. And God used those moments that were meant for evil and to harm me to give me this story, to share with kids, to share with young people, to share with adults, which could hopefully inspire them to understand how much God loves them. That's my passion. To help people understand how much God loves them, no matter what your childhood was like, no matter what your teenage years were like or young adult years were like, no matter how many times you messed up, no matter how many times you've rejected, no matter how many times you've walked away from God, God says, I still want you because I can use you right where you are at. When God is enough. When God is enough, he causes all things, even being bullied, walked on, made fun of, because you're smart or because you wear different clothes, and I like to wear funky hats, Got made fun of that too. People made fun of me in that too, But God used those moments in my life, for someone else. And folks, when God is enough, which I didn't discover till a little bit later, when God is enough, he causes all things to work together for you, your good, and you won't be disappointed anymore. When God is enough, when God is enough, He causes all things to work together for your good. And He always is, but you begin to recognize it. And folks, I guarantee it, that you will never be disappointed again, ever. Let's pray. Father God, thank you so much for you've walked with me through some really difficult issues, and I'm grateful for that. And God, what I've learned through all the things you've allowed me to walk through and all the moments that have come in my life, you're enough. When people make fun of me, you're enough. When people walk over me, you're enough. When I've been disappointed with you, you've helped me grow up. Oh God, you're enough. Thank you for loving me and making me who I am. I thank you for every moment, good, bad, evil, ugly. I thank you for every moment, because in every moment you have been there and you've helped me grow up.